we are, and maybe where we're from or something like that. And I won't remember your names because my brain hasn't memory about that long. But maybe over the couple of weeks I'll be seeing you, maybe I'll be able to remember some of you guys' names. So, my name is Ken Bowles, okay? His name is
Michael Davis.
Michael Davis. Yeah. Your name is
Alan Whitaker.
Alan Whitaker. Alan Whitaker. Joey Swoboda. The Swoboda name is safe. Did you have brothers and sisters? Jacob Ferris? Harris, okay.
Mason Harris.
Mason Harris. And interesting. This fellow here, Dave Schultz, will be the nurse at some of our camps. So you'll see him around. And you, sir?
Linus.
First name?
Linus.
Linus? And the last name? Well, okay. Oh, are you from the famous Quinn family? Okay. Remember that?
You're famous.
Yeah. Or there's another member of the famous Quinn family. And your name is?
Peter.
Peter? Okay, Peter. And now on this side, the lady hiding behind her handout. Yep. What's your name? Yes.
He's Rachel.
What's your name?
Say it louder. Me?
Rachel. Okay. Rachel Sports. Your name?
Jane Whitaker.
Okay.
Jane Swoboda.
Okay.
Swoboda.
Another Swoboda. Something is happening outside here. Everybody was outside. Okay. Your name? And what's your last name? Okay.
Christian Tucker.
Okay, Kristen. And your name?
Noreen Dressy.
Okay. And back.
Isaiah Schwartz.
Isaiah Swartz, followed by
Schwartz.
Kristen Swartz. And you know the fellow in orange shirt?
Dave Reeves.
Nick Reeves. And
Corey Reeves.
are you related or something? No, not related. You have some explaining to do about this kid that's running around.
Cassie Schwartz.
Cassie Swartz, okay. So there you go. And hope to see some of you guys around. How many are going to be at Turkey Town Camp? Okay, that's good. How many at Arcadia Valley? Okay, how many at Junior Camp? How many at Senior Camp?
Just keep your hands up.
There's something that's been added to the schedule you don't know about. In September, on the 25th, there's going to be a concert in the gym by a group coming down from Canada. And so circle the 25th of September. Their name is the Josties, Jostfin. They're from Canada.
The Josties?
Yeah,
Josties.
The Josties. Okay, they're very, very good. We've had them out of our chapel a few times.
Aren't they bringing another family from like?
Yeah, they might be bringing another family, so there might be two bands there the same night. You're gonna let me know if the other group's gonna be touring with them or not, okay?
That's the same weekend as our family weekend, so we'll have that going on. The Sunday of the family weekend, the afternoon, is the Battle of Pilot Knob. And then for the rest of the family weekend, we're going to have the speaker's name is Hernandez. What's his first name?
Well, I
I can't remember.
But he's gonna also be the speaker for the concert.
September 25th.
September 25th, right, yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna do the speaking for the concert.
And this is
It's gonna
from
be-
Friday to Saturday? The family camp?
Family weekend is
On
Friday, Saturday,
night,
Sunday.
at 6 o'clock, we're putting on a concert up there at the gym. There might be another family joining them, and the speaker will be doing the speaking at the end. A short message, so bring people that aren't saved.
What's the name of it? It's called Family Camp?
Family, yeah, we call it family
What time does it
weekend.
start on Friday?
Well, I think family camp starts at 6.
It's in the evening,
Okay,
yes.
but because I have school on Friday.
Yeah, 6 o'clock Friday to start.
Okay, now, the handout is pretty extensive and we're not going to cover it. very much except for one paragraph, basically, in it. But I thought that if you are overwhelmed by interest in the topic that we're going to be dealing with today, you might like to see what the whole topic might look like. It's about Hebrew poetry. Somebody tell me a book in the Bible that is made up exclusively of Hebrew poetry. Anybody know that? Mr. Schwartz?
Solo.
Mr. Schultz.
That's okay, I've got
He says the Psalms, and he is correct. The book of Psalms is totally made up of Hebrew poetry. And there's other Hebrew poetry scattered throughout the Old Testament, a teeny tiny bit in the New Testament, if you know where to look for it. And some of the prophets use Hebrew poetry. There's a fellow by the name of Bob Diffenbaugh. Bob Diffenbaugh is a well-known preacher, speaker, conference speaker from groups like our churches. And he's from Community Bible Chapel in Richardson, Texas. And he has a little illustration here about Hebrew poetry. Jim Dunham, he says, from the Flying W Ranch, tells a story which illustrates the need for the lesson. What is a song? Jim is a Christian gunslinger and pastoral artist who has taught many Western movie stars how to handle a gun. When he got married, he decided to teach his wife to handle a gun. To his delight, she became amazingly accurate. One day he took her deer hunting. He positioned her in a good spot, told her he would be nearby, and instructed her to shoot her rifle twice into the air if she got in any trouble. A little later, he heard one shot fired from his wife's direction. Assuming she had either shot a deer or gotten into trouble and forgotten to fire a second shot, Jim went to look for her. When he came upon her, she was holding a man at gunpoint. Jim said he overheard the man saying, "All right, lady, the deer is yours, but first let me get my saddle off of him." It's important for a deer hunter not only to be able to shoot straight, but to know the difference between a deer and a horse. It's also crucial for a student of the scriptures to know the difference between poetry and prose. When we read in the early chapters of Genesis that God created Adam and Eve, we read it as history, and we believe this man and woman to be historical. Just as the New Testament indicates our Lord and the apostles believed that it was a historical story. However, when we read in the Psalms that David made his bed swim and he dissolved his couch with tears, like in Psalms chapter 6 and verse 6, we do not take his words literally, but we should accept the truth behind the figurative expression that he was so overwhelmed with sorrow, he cried constantly. When we read in Psalms that the rivers clap their hands and the mountains sing for joy, like in Psalm chapter 98 and verse 8, we interpret these words in light of the fact that we're dealing with poetry and not prose. That's the topic of our little talk this morning, is poetry. Diffenbaugh continues. Whoops, I get to change pictures. Oh, I haven't started my slides yet. What have I done? I worked so hard on these slides and I haven't even started my slides yet. Don't go away. No, don't anybody look at my password.
You can't tell either.
Okay.
Wow, that's a long one.
It's a long one, but it makes sense to me. Yeah, let's see, get down here. This is what the inside of my brain looks like, I think. That's what happens when you get old. There we go. We're getting close. Let's see here. Looking here. (2011) December poetry. There we go. If you're lucky, this will happen. My color is not coloring right, is it? Okay, you're not supposed to see that, guys. Close your eyes. See, that is number 1. That's right, number 1. Okay, that was a slide for the things I just said. Here we go for the next little page here. This is continuing this quote from Brother Diffenbaugh. He says, "At this point, I do not wish to dwell on the details of Hebrew poetic style as much as I desire to describe the blessing the Psalms can be to us as poetry. In the first place, poetry is much more vivid, catching our attention and stimulating our thought. It is somewhat like listening to the shadow on the radio." Now, that's gone over the top of your heads because whoever listens to the radio anymore, right? But as I was driving down here, I got satellite radio in my car, and as I drive back and forth to Dayspring, I like to listen to a channel on 148, which is old-time radio programs. And so it's a drama. You're generally listening to drama. I listen to a mystery today on the way down. And there's no video, okay? It's just all audio. There's some sound effects and stuff like that. But with your mind, you fill in everything that's missing. And so it's kind of fun because you can kind of fill in the way you want to, the way you feel that it would look really good, you know. Whereas when you got TV, you're kind of captured by the picture and you don't have that process of using your imagination, okay? Diffenbaugh is going to say that Hebrew poetry is like the old-time radio programs. You can add your imagination, and it makes things much more vivid. So he says it's somewhat like listening to the shadow on the radio. Enough is said to stimulate the imagination, but much is left for us to fill in. The excitement is often experienced by what the reader himself supplies, what he or she brings to the passage and takes from it. Poetry is therefore a more intense form of communication. Okay, so much for the introduction.
Good.
Okay. Now I got to jump over a bunch of stuff and go to slide number 15. Because I just want to talk about one aspect of Hebrew poetry this morning. Go to slide number 15. There we are, parallelisms. There are different topics we can talk about in Hebrew poetry. One is there's an extensive use of figures of speech. Figures of speech. Can anybody give me an example of a figure of speech?
Don't beat around the bush.
Okay, probably. Unless you were literally beating around a bush. What does that mean?
It means it's said between two people, and it means let's get right to the heart of the matter. Let's dispense with all the get around and fluff. Let's address the issue at hand.
Okay, how about it was raining cats and dogs? it was raining really hard, exactly right. It wasn't really raining cats and dogs, but we used that figure of speech to deliver the idea, kind of interestingly, that it was, well, you're pretty smart, aren't you? that it was really raining really kind of hard, okay? So one of the things about Hebrew poetry is their extensive use of figures of speech. Of course, other forms of literature use figures of speech as well. There's also forms in Hebrew poetry. This is only found in Psalms. Not all the Psalms are found in the book of Psalms, but certainly this is true of many of the Psalms. And that is that there's a whole family of languages that are similar to Hebrew. Aramaic is one, and then there's Hebrew. Okay, and this family is even wider than those two languages. Have a commonality in that they use poetry like this. Okay, and the poetry, a single poem, may have different portions that are purpose for doing different things. So that if you read from the front to the back of the particular poem, you're not reading chronological events, but you're going through different portions of a formal Hebrew poem that have been set up. Okay, and there's information in the handbook about that. When I deal with that, I just wanted to tell you about that. Let's see, what else have I left out here? We've got figures of speech. We've got parallelisms, which is going to be the big topic today. And forms. Oh, and then music. You will probably be amused by the little section here that talks about music. Poetry, Hebrew poetry, was designed to be sung, and they sang it at temple. At the tabernacle. There was a beautiful gate, not the beautiful gate, but there was a very significant gate in front of the gate to the holy place. Okay, it was called the Nikhar gate, if my memory serves me right. And there were curved steps leading up to it from whatever the courtyard was right in front of it. Can't remember now what that would be. And on this curved steps, on these series of curved steps, they had Levite choirs that would come out and sing. And on both sides in the floor underneath, the basement floor, there were music rooms, and out of these music rooms would come Levites who had instruments to play along with it. And they would sing songs as part of their worship service. So there's kind of some fun stuff there also about worship. Now, the only thing, the thing that is particularly characteristic of Hebrew poetry is the parallelism, okay? And that's what I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about today. Before we do that, let me just say this. I really love studying the Bible. It's frustrating to me that I have so many other things that I have to do besides studying the Bible. I got saved back in, I think, 1962 or 1963. And it was like somebody just turned on a switch. That before that time, I had trouble. I could read the stories, stuff like that, but as far as understanding what they meant, what the scriptures meant, I had big trouble. I couldn't understand it. But when I got saved, just automatically, I began to really understand what the Bible was talking about. And I've always had this great desire to learn more and more about the Bible. I started out, after I graduated from high school, I went to engineering college, got bored, worked for McDonnell Douglas for a while, got bored, and I finally went to a Greek class that Rick Bovey was teaching up at Hazelwood Bible Chapel, and doesn't exist anymore. And I wanted to see if I could really do any languages. And he was teaching biblical Hebrew, or Koine Greek. And I wanted to see if I could have enough intelligence to pick up a little bit of Greek. And I went to that for a while and decided I probably could. And then I decided, well, I'm going to quit McDonnell Douglas and I'm going to go study the Bible full-time at a school, okay? And I did that for 7 years because I love to study the Bible. And it frustrates me. God has also given me a gift of administration, I think, and sometimes they don't integrate very well. It frustrates me. I can't study the Bible as much as I want to.
Did you just say you went to school for 7 years?
7 years. Yeah.
7 years of Bible stuff?
Yeah.
Bible knowledge?
Yeah.
So you was all of Dallas?
4 years in Dallas, 3 years at Trinity Evangelical Christian School.
Where's that?
In Deerfield, Illinois, Chicago area.
And who runs that?
The Evangelical Free Church of America.
Okay, that's just here.
So I love this kind of stuff, okay? And I'm hoping that some of you guys will love this kind of stuff as well. Because we need people who are really excited about the Bible, who would go into it in some depths, and then be able to relay what a person has found onto his congregation in his church and stuff like that. So that's another reason why I thought it'd be kind of interesting to do what we're doing today. Okay, parallelisms. There are 6 types of parallelisms used in Hebrew poetry, which is unique in poetry and Semitic languages. Here's a definition. I think we're probably following pretty closely now to your handout. If you go to like page, let's see, we got page 2, about half the way down, it says parallelisms. We're not exactly following it, but very soon we'll be following that. Okay? We'll talk about different examples, different types, and I'll give you some examples and stuff. Definition of parallelisms. Here's a fellow by the name of Gary Amrot. And this is his definition of parallelisms. He says, thought rhythm as opposed to sound rhythm or rhyme. Okay, English poetry. What's the sign of English poetry? And it's rhythm and rhyme. Okay. In Hebrew parallelisms, the idea is thought rhyme instead of rhythm and rhyme, instead of sound things it does to your mind, something like that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Randy Gruber.
Hey, Randy.
He's going to be ministering to you some more today. Here is another definition of parallelisms. Hebrew poetry was not built on rhyming words, but on parallel ideas. The technical term is parallelism. Hebrew poetry is constructed of 2 or more lines with some pre-designated relationship between each line. This is a definition from a fellow whose name is Roger Hand. Okay, now, put this back in here and push the button. And we're going to go through this list now of different kinds of parallelisms that's in your handout. It'll go in the same order as your handout. Let's see. It will be nice. Or you haven't got the handout yet, have you? Here's one for Randy. Okay, here is a example of Hebrew parallelisms, poetry. Parallelisms in Hebrew poetry. The king is not saved by a mighty army. A warrior is not delivered by great strength. These are 2 parallel lines, okay? And I'm going to click it again to show you where the parallels exist. In the first line, king is the same thing as a warrior in the second line. And the verb there, saved, is the same thing as delivered in the second line. And a mighty army is a way of exhibiting great strength. So those 2 things are parallel as well. So there is similarity between the 2 adjoining lines. That's one kind of Hebrew parallelism, which is called synonymous parallelism, because both lines of the Hebrew poetry are similar. They just use different words, kind of use synonyms for each other. Okay, here comes another example. This is going to be Psalm 24 and verse 3. Now, let me tell you in advance here that there's going to be something for you to do in a few minutes. I'm going to give a cash award to somebody who does the very best on the Old Testament when it came down, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to take Psalm 61 and look at it and tell me what type of parallelism is being used in each verse. Okay, so you will get familiar with these definitions. Okay, Psalm 24 and verse 3. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? Now, up the hill in line 1 is the same thing as you're ascending the hill in line 1, and in the second line you're actually standing on the hill. Okay, that's what's taking place in this verse. Up the hill in line 1, standing on the hill in line 2. The second line repeats one idea from the first line and develops it further. I shall ascend, who shall stand, and then the developing it further is the hill of the Lord and his holy place. So you might be able to switch those around, actually. The idea is the second line repeats one idea from the first line and develops it further. That's the second type of Hebrew parallelisms. It's called synthetic parallelism. We go to Psalm 52 and verse 2. And I'm skipping a bunch of pages in my notes here, so be patient with me. Psalm 52 and verse 2. The tongue devises destruction like a sharp razor, a worker of deceit. And here is the parallelism revealed. The name of the type of parallelism is emblematic parallelism. The first line carries the concept, and the second line illustrates it with an image. Your tongue devises destruction, and then the illustration it gives of the first line is like a sharp razor, or worker of deceit. What's that? Okay. That would be a figure of speech. Now, we go on to Proverbs.
You need to explain for the other guys what that is up there.
Now, that is a razor, ladies and
That is
gentlemen.
an old-fashioned razor.
That's an old-fashioned razor like my dad would have used. I would have never used anything like that. I used an electric one. Okay. Here comes another one. Proverbs 29, verse 2. When the righteous increase, the people rejoice. But when a wicked man rules, the people groan. The first line is, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice. The righteous man. I'm thinking of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And there you have a picture of Aslan, who is a representation of the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, the second line of this verse of Hebrew poetry says, but when a wicked man rules, the people groan. How many of you have seen the movie? Okay, I thought that really demonstrates it, because it was like that in the movie when Aslan, who represents the Lord Jesus Christ, was ruling, that everybody was rejoicing. It was a happy time. But when the wicked man, in this case, a wicked woman rules, the witch, then the people groan. And here's the type of parallelism this would be. This is a parallelism in the first line, talk about righteous people. The second line, wicked people. First line, the righteous people ruling, results in rejoicing. In the second line, results in the people groaning. And it's called antithetical parallelism. This is a contrast between the first line and the second line. That's the key to understanding something that is antithetical parallelism. Okay, here comes, I don't know if this is the last one or not, it might be. And I'm skipping a page in my notes. And we got Psalm 93 and verse 3. The floods have lifted up their voice, the floods lift up their pounding waves. The initial portion of the first line is repeated in the second line. The floods have lifted, the floods lift up. But both end with different portions. In the first line, it ends with their voice. In the second line, it ends with pounding waves. And this is called climatic parallelism. Okay? Now, here is a copy of Psalm 61. I don't know that what I've said has made a lot of, I know that what I have said has made a lot of sense with you. And the sense really comes when you actually work on something, okay? So here is Psalm chapter 61. I think it consists of 8 verses, something like that. And each verse consists of 2 lines, except for one verse, I think it has 3 lines. And what I'm asking you to do then is in your handout, using the definitions of these different types of parallelism, is to assign to each verse the type of parallelism that's being manifested in that verse. Okay? And the financial reward. Let's see what I have in my book over here.
I think you have one more parallelism to go over. Did you go over formal?
Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, you're right. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Psalm 45:7. Therefore God, my God, has anointed thee with the oil of joy above thy fellows. Now here's the deal with this, which is called formal parallelism. You go to a psalm, and there are all kinds of parallelisms in it that you identify. And then the author of the psalm wants to say something that isn't really a parallel. It doesn't really exhibit a parallelism, okay? And when he does that, that's called formal parallelism. Thank you. Okay, everybody have a pen? If not, I have a pen somewhere.
I can't prepare it. I have one extra, so I'm going to tomorrow.
Who's that? I have more. Don't think I'm running out.
It might be over there, Dr. Bowles.
What's that?
Over there, all the way over.
I got a pen. Over there. Who else needs pens?
Serena. Here.
Okay. Anybody else need pens?
Thanks.
Boys back to.
Randy and Zelda. I don't know where We got 2 Christians here today. Okay, so knock yourselves out. I'm not gonna guide you through it. Just use the handout, the definitions of the various kinds of parallelisms, and,
So we're gonna go through Psalm 61, and apply parallelism to
yeah,
this.
find out which version of Psalm 61 exhibits a specific type of parallelism. You have to decide which one it is in each verse, and you have the list
Which
in
pair,
your
which ones
handout.
do we have?
Psalm 61. The reason I handed it out a sheet with Psalm 61 on it so that we all would be using the same version. And you'll hand your work in, and I will take a look at it in my leisure this weekend. And whoever I figure does the best job is my. Okay. You do this in 15 minutes, that means 20 hours. You might put your name, print your name in the upper right-hand corner. That way I'll know whose paper I'm looking at. I remember back in the days when a quarter would do the same thing, but inflation is hit.